On December 7th, 2023, Monster Hunter Wilds was announced at the Game Awards, leading to a surge of hype from fans of the series. People have taken to platforms like Twitter, YouTube, and Reddit to theorycraft on what the gameplay might look like and the things they want in or out of the game. But with any new Monster Hunter game, there's always one topic of discussion that not only interests me, but is deeply fascinating from a game design perspective, and that's the roster of monsters. For those unfamiliar, Monster Hunter is an action RPG franchise with the first game releasing on the PlayStation 2 back in 2004. Though story beats differ between games, they all share one common theme. You, a hunter, must set out to slay monsters of different shapes, sizes, and abilities, then take their giblets to make armor and weapons so you can kill something cooler. It's simple, it's addictive, it's Monster Hunter. These monsters, however, are not always unique. The textbook example of this is Rathalos, whose Monster Hunter's equivalent to Pikachu as an instantly recognizable icon of the series. He's been in every single game since 2004, hell, he's in fucking Smash Bros. And Metal Gear? Strange. In any other game, if they kept reusing the same boss over and over again, you'd wonder how you ended up playing Elden Ring. Yet for some reason, in Monster Hunter, Rathalos is always fun. Well, fun might not be the right word, but it's always cool to fight him again. The same goes for monsters like Zinogre, Nargacuga, Glavenus, Diablos. These are popular monsters who make appearances in multiple games beyond their introduction. This is, ultimately, just recycled content, yet when fans see Astalos coming back in Sunbreak, they lose their shit. And for good reason. But why? What makes recycled content work in Monster Hunter? In order to tackle this question, we need to go back to what Monster Hunter is. As the name implies, you hunt monsters, but what does this mean from a gameplay perspective? Ignoring all the bells and whistles, hunting a monster requires dealing enough damage over a prolonged period of time. If you lose all of your health 3 times, or if you take too long to kill the monster, you're out. The game offers several different ways to find an advantage during a fight, like items or multiplayer, but arguably the most important factor is the equipment you bring. Ignoring what weapon type you personally prefer, a stronger weapon that deals more damage and having armor with higher defense and better skills will help you overcome more difficult fights. But how does one obtain these better weapons and armor? Giblets. Or like rocks and shit, but mostly giblets. This is the gameplay loop of Monster Hunter. You start off by killing your local lizard and slowly you work your way up, but there's more to it than that. One lizard is rarely enough to make those sick ass pants you want, so you kill another, and bam! Game progression. But more importantly, by obtaining these pants, you learn to understand the lizard, spiritually and literally. The act of fighting a monster is like a dance where he does the 2-frame tango and you're ever buying this fucking game. But the more you practice, you learn that it takes 2 to tango. You learn their every fucking move, and like a crescendo, you outdance them and you win the school talent show. But the act of winning the talent show isn't really that important anymore, is it? I mean, you already made his pants. Why are we doing this? Well, because it's fun. Yeah, I know, the video game is fun. What a fucking concept, but hear me out. The game forcing you to repeat a fight multiple times is not an accident. Yes, it's a way for players to improve their skill, but it also lends itself naturally to players having favorite monsters and preferred fights, even when you only fought them in the first place for some pants. As an example, Uragaan will always hold a special place in my heart. I fought this beautiful boy so many times for his funny chin hammer back in the day, and the repeated experience you get fighting Uragaan, on top of the immediate dopamine you get when you finally get that sick-ass weapon, cemented him as a fight I was comfortable with and have thought highly of ever since. It's like Stockholm Syndrome, but for gamers. And like with Stockholm Syndrome, when I saw my boy Uragaan in Monster Hunter World, I fell in love with the dance all over again. The gameplay loop of Monster Hunter inherently forces players to prioritize mastering a fight by rewarding them with progression. Whether a fight is recycled or not, players having fun and engaging with this gameplay loop will learn multiple dances and develop favorites that, for reasons we'll discuss in a moment, transfer between different games, making recycled content fun and engaging time and time again. So, is that it? People like returning monsters just because they have favorites and or Stockholm Syndrome?
No!
At least not in its entirety. I like Uragaan, but if Capcom just copy-pasted my boy from Try into World, he'd look grody for one, but it also wouldn't be as fun. Despite being a later installment of the same game, Monster Hunter Tri and Monster Hunter World are very different experiences. We'll touch on this more, but as it stands, the old Uragaan fight would not hold up in World. So why does this repeated experience work anyway? Because of change, and the lack thereof. Now I know what you're thinking. What the fuck are you talking about? Well, let's look at the lack thereof first. I know I just said Try and World are different experiences, but Uragaan and Monster Hunter World, at its core, is the same fight as Uragaan in prior installments. Though Uragaan does get some new moves to spice things up, the departure from his core fight is never substantial enough to invalidate this baseline. All the classics return, including hits such as Chin, Rock, Vehicular Manslaughter. From the perspective of a veteran who's played this game for way too fucking long, Jesus Christ, this dance has been done before. This, no matter how you look at it, is recycled content. All he did was get a makeover, and all returning players get is some dopamine for seeing their boy back in HD. On a surface level, this is no different from how other games handle recycled content. Like, look at the fucking Asylum Demon from Dark Souls. He's the first boss of the game. He's big, he's caked up, he's great. Later in the game, on your way to Lost Izalith, you'll fight a new boss called the Demon Fire Sage. Wait a minute, there's a hot new look here, but I'd recognize that dumpy anywhere. Like Uragaan, all the Demon Fire Sage did was get a makeover and like one new move. This is also recycled content, but it sucks. Nobody is on Twitter saying that Dark Souls is made better because of the Demon Fire Sage, so why does Monster Hunter get away with it while Dark Souls doesn't? Let's talk change. Both Uragaan and the Demon Fire Sage have minor changes to their looks and moveset, yes, but there's one major difference between the two. The abilities of you, the player. With each new installment of Monster Hunter, new tools and ways of playing are provided to the player to allow you to dance in new and exciting ways. New weapons, underwater combat, revamped movesets, hunter arts, mantles, slinger, wirebug, switch skills, all of these tools provide the player new ways to interact with the monsters and the world around them alike, and have managed to keep the Monster Hunter gameplay loop fresh for 20 years. This is why older Monster Hunter games can feel so different from newer ones, but also why the same dance can feel so unique. The Uragaan hunt in-world, at its surface, is the same tango, but while he's over there practicing his steps, you're in his face fucking breakdancing with all your new sick moves. It's great. I mentioned new moves being added for the monsters, and a lot of the time these attacks serve to counter your new abilities as a hunter. This method of altering the fight can have its downsides, discussed in detail by Hurdy in his video No More Wirebugs, which I highly recommend. But at its core, these new moves serve to keep the dance fresh and balanced while maintaining the familiarity that allows returning players to be rewarded for mastering the fight once before. A returning monster, by being a mix of new and old, provides an opportunity for returning players to directly compare how their use of a game's new mechanics can reinvigorate a dance they've loved before. And who knows, maybe they'll learn to love a new way of dancing too. All of this can again be contrasted with the Demon Fire Sage. Actually, that's not even a perfect comparison. Look at the Stray Demon from Dark Souls 3. It's a newer game in the series that recycles the Asylum Demon from Dark Souls, though the execution is a bit rocky. I'm sorry. Dark Souls 3 adds new tools for the player, yes, but these don't alter how the player interacts with the world or the game in the same way that Monster Hunter does. Let's be honest, you're not using the weapon arts, you're spamming R1 like a lobotomite. This leaves the Stray Demon as just a set piece for returning players to point in Dark Souls 1? Now, am I saying that Monster Hunter isn't guilty of nostalgia pandering? No. They know what they're doing by adding Zenogre into every fucking game. But Monster Hunter consistently brings enough to the table with each installment that recycled content doesn't diminish from the experience of playing the game, but rather enhances it for returning players. Eco, you've been bitching about the Asylum Demon and Demon Fire Sage a lot. Yeah, I guess I have been. You know, I've been shitting on Dark Souls a lot in this video, but I really love the games. Maybe I'll make a video about recycled content in Dark Souls in the future. Yeah, but in the context of Monster Hunter, wouldn't the Demon Fire Sage be considered a subspecies of the Asylum Demon? Huh, that's a poignant and transition-like observation. I guess he would be. So doesn't that mean Monster Hunter's recycled content sucks too? No! But also yes! This didn't fit with the discussion of returning monsters, but we are talking about recycled content, and after how much I ripped into Dark Souls, I'd be remiss not to mention the proverbial gamut in the room, subspecies. Historically, subspecies of Monster Hunter were simply recolored versions of monsters already existing in the game. Look at Yian Cuckoo and his subspecies, for example. You see, this one is blue, not red, and he has like one new attack, I think. Oh. So am I trying to argue that blue Yian Cuckoo is better recycled content than Demon Fire Sage? Yes and no. In terms of gameplay variety, blue Yian Cuckoo, along with basically every early subspecies, fucking blows. They suffer from the exact same issue as the Demon Fire Sage, where they don't change enough to be a distinct and memorable fight, and as they often appear in the same game as the base monster, you as a hunter don't have any new or flashy tools to use against them. They're just there. However, even early into Monster Hunter's life, there has been one saving grace. Our holy Lord and Savior, the Monster Hunter gameplay loop. Even though the fight is basically identical, the giblets you carve are unique, allowing you to make new weapons and armor with different stats and skills. Though these weapons and armor are also recycled and often simply recolored versions of the original gear, the new skills and stats expand the variety of possible loadouts for the player. This is a good thing and turns what would normally be lazy game design meant to pad out the runtime into slightly better lazy game design. Thankfully, the Monster Hunter team also realized that subspecies were lazy, and since Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate have generally worked to make subspecies more unique. Not only changing the coloration and adding new moves, but changing the monster's element, the environment where you fight them, mechanics of the fight, and ensuring that the weapons and armor made from them continue to provide their own distinct benefits. By virtue of the gameplay loop rewarding repeat fights, this unique gear and the increasingly dramatic differences between subspecies make the fights feel fresh again. Though I would personally argue that this formula of slapping on a new element and calling it a subspecies has become a bit stale as of late. Subspecies is just the tip of the iceberg too. If you're a fucking nerd, then you'll know all about rare species, variants, deviants, frenzied, apex, afflicted, risen, burst, origin, zenith, blah blah blah, but that is way beyond the scope of this video and maybe a topic for another day. Just know that, as much as I believe Monster Hunter takes great care and effort into ensuring that returning fights and recycled content stays fresh, they don't always hit the mark. Despite this, with everything the Monster Hunter team continues to introduce and expand on, it's clear to see why the recycled content in Monster Hunter works and will continue to work into the future. And now, with Monster Hunter Wilds on the way, I'm excited to see who makes the cut, and who I have the pleasure of dancing with again on a new, shinier floor. If Gammoth doesn't fucking make it in, I swear to God...